Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Allie. Today we're talking about all of the books I read in May and a few of the books I have picked out for June. Just a heads up, my husband's family is visiting for 2 weeks, which yes, does sound like a very long time. So I don't know how many books I'll be able to read and how often I'm going to be able to upload. The second week that they're here, we're all going to Kauai, the next island over. I'm really hoping that I'll have enough time to at least read one book so I can take you on vacation with me. My mother-in-law has jam-packed an actual itinerary that's itemized down, so I don't know how much time I'm gonna be having to read. But here are the books that I read in May. I think all but one of these I vlogged, so if one of them catches your interest, be sure to check out the reading vlog for that book. First, I read Happy Place. I'm sure you did too. This is by Emily Henry. This is about a couple. They are engaged and they've broken up, but they're hiding it from their friends because they have a really solid friend group. I think it's 6 of them. They've been friends since college. They've been roommates. I forget how old they are now. They're probably in their late 20s, early 30s maybe. And they go to this summer lake house every single summer. Maybe it's a beach house. I don't think it matters. The couple has broken up, but they decide not to tell their friends and they decide to pretend that they're still together just so they don't make things weird because it's the last summer that they're all going to be at this beach house. That's the gist of the story. It is dual timeline, and my favorite is the one in the past where we see them meet for the first time and we see them fall in love. And sadly, we see them, grow apart and break up. But then in the present timeline, it's their second chance romance. I am going to give this a 4-star. Them falling in love, I was just so there for it. I also really liked hearing about this friendship grow and have their own sort of conflict too, and I just thought it was so rich and detailed. The atmosphere, the summer feeling, it was very strong in this book. It made me want to go outside and go swimming. There was a kind of clunky part in the middle where I was like, okay, what are we doing? Something needs to happen now or I'm gonna get annoyed. This is also one of those books, which is pretty much every romance book, where if they had just communicated properly, things could have been avoided. I think about that every single time I read a book in general, but that's not how books work, and it's actually not how life works, so I should probably stop thinking like that. In my vlog, I said that I like this better than Beach Read, but I don't think that's accurate. So I think I'm gonna have to reread Beach Read maybe when I go to the beach in a couple weeks to solidify that statement. If it's true or not, we'll see. Then my husband picked me some books. He picked me 3 books to read out of my TBR. The first one I read was Death in Her Hands by Otessa Moshfegh. This is about an old woman who is possibly going insane, ? Is she not? When the book opens, she comes across a note in her woods. She lives in this secluded cabin in the woods, very creepy. The note says, her name is Magda. Nobody will ever know who killed her. It wasn't me. Here's her dead body, but there's no dead body. So our main character, whose name is, what is her name? What's her name? Y'all, I cannot for the life of me remember her name. It's like Vesta or something like that. This book is basically Vesta thinking. A lot of thinking happening in here, a lot of very minute details about this old woman who's trying to make up this story of why this note's here and then solve the mystery of that story that she created. It's interesting because she names some of the characters that she writes and creates, but then you kind of see them in the town and it's their actual names, like people in the town, and you're like, oh my god, wait, is this real? Or is she making this up? I don't know. There's so much detail in here that if you don't appreciate detail, then it could be very, very tiring. It's kind of like when you're at the store or you're at work in a public facing atmosphere and someone just talks and talks and talks incessantly to you. It could be very exhausting. I am so impressed with this author's level of detail. This is the second book of hers that I've read. I last month read this book, My Year of Rest and Relaxation, and there was so much detail in that one as well. But this was more horror centric, and it wasn't like actual horror. It was more like a creeping sort of feeling. I'm giving this 4 stars just for the level of detail that it had. It was so impressive. There's also a wonderful dog in here named Charlie. It was kind of sad. It made me scared to get old, as do most old person books that are sort of horror based. Yeah. Then in that vlog, I read Magic for Liars by Sarah Gailey. I was very excited for this because Sarah Gailey's other book, The Echo Wife, was one of my favorites of last year, and I think it might be one of my all-time favorite books. This didn't hit quite as hard. Let me tell you what it's about. It's sort of a cozy mystery / fantasy, and our main character named Ivy Gamble is a private detective. She's just a a regular Joe, like you and I, you and me. She has a twin sister, though, who is magically gifted. And so there are these mages that are like witches and wizards. Her sister happened to be one, but she wasn't. And so they've had a sort of battle and a lot of tension between the two of them since they've been children. But in the present day, I forget how old she is. She's like 30 something. Ivy, our main character's twin sister, works at this magical school where a murder takes place. And Ivy is responsible for investigating this murder and trying to figure out if it is a murder or if it is a freak accident, yada yada. I ended up giving this 3 stars. There is kind of like this weird tone that I didn't get in The Echo Wife. It almost feels like this is like self-published. It doesn't really feel as sharp as that other book was. There was a really awkward info dump scene where she just starts talking to a random bartender and explaining this magical system, which felt really cheap. And then there's this forced side romance that is so incredibly dull and is just there to make this main character have a little bit more in her life and in this story, and it felt so weak that it was distracting. But there were some good parts in here too. I like the magic in here. I thought it was really interesting, but I really like this sort of boarding school setting, and I honestly wish it was told from like the children or the teenagers' perspective. I was mostly interested in their powers, obviously, but the sort of hierarchical, I can never say that word, sort of political system within that school, and especially of the mean girl in here. She was so manipulative and so bitchy and so passive aggressive that it was impressive, and I just want to read a book with her in it. I think she was probably the coolest character in here. While the murder mystery part had me very intrigued in the beginning, I didn't really care too much toward the end. So this is actually kind of leaning more toward a 2.5, but I'm gonna like level up to a 3, which I'm kind of sad about. I feel bad because I really do like Sarah Gailey's writing, obviously, but I'm glad I didn't read this book before I read The Echo Wife. Although maybe I would have liked it more if I had read it first. I don't know. But then I struck gold in that video with A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan. This is a sort of literary fiction. It's sort of short stories where all of the characters kind of intersect and are briefly mentioned in the stories preceding it. And sometimes we get the point of view of someone who's associated with someone else, like in a different time. Like our first story is about Sasha. I think she's in her 20s or something like that, maybe her early 30s. And she's living in the city. She's living the single life. She has a problem with stealing. She's talking to her therapist, whatever. I really like that story. It's a great opening. In the 12th story though, first of all, it's one of the most visually interesting things I've ever read because it's literally a PowerPoint. I don't know if you can see, my camera's not really showing me. Oh, I don't know if this is a spoiler. That's a peacock outside. It's right out there. You probably want some food, but I'm not done talking to you guys. This video's slowly just becoming so chaotic. But anyway, this story is through the lens of someone very close to Sasha, but way in the future. So we like sort of get more background into her and kind of see where her life ends up. So I find it really interesting how character is played, but also like how the story is told. There are so many heartbreaking moments in here. In my vlog, I was talking about how sad this made me. I started crying, I think in the 4th story, which is my favorite, called Safari. However, now that I'm thinking about it, it's not a sad book. Like, this isn't a book to like try to cry. It's just something that deeply felt hopeless to me, just because there is no sort of happy ending for anyone. I guess there are a couple happy endings, but it's not a happy tone. It's not necessarily a sad tone either. It's just this point blank, life sucks and then you die kind of tone. And I obviously love it. Apparently that's something I like. I like that we got a bunch of different timelines and different generations. I think there's a story in the 1970s, the 90s, different, what is that called? Time. I don't know. I thought music was going to be a big part of this. It literally says it on the back. Music pulsing on every page. People are indirectly or directly in the music industry, but there's hardly any talk of music except maybe in like 1 or 2 stories. I like talk of music because I was in band for like 7 years, but even if you don't, it's kind of just cool. It's very New York City if you like that atmosphere. I'm doing a horrible job of explaining this book, but it's hard to really talk about. I will say, if you're triggered by crusty men, this might be a book to steer clear from because, my God, all the men in here suck ass. But it's that kind of book. Like, no one is really the hero in this, except they're all sort of the heroes of their own story. And I think it says a lot about how we are sort of in our own worlds, living our own lives, obviously. But like, we have our own story in our head, things that we're focused on, and we have no idea sometimes of the things that are going around us. This book does such a great job of getting one person's point of view and their focus and sort of mentioning people around them. And then in the next story, you see the people around them and you see what they're focused on, how they feel about the person you just read about. It's very, very, very cool. Then I read Flawless by Elsie Silver. For some reason, I was excited to read this because I love reading romances. I'll never stop reading romances, but I wasn't thinking that this was going to be a really high rating. However, I had so much fun with this. I'm giving it 4 stars. I thought this couple was so cute. Let me tell you what it's about. What are their names? Oh God. This is about Summer and Rhett. Rhett is a famous bull rider and Summer is an agent on his PR team. Her dad owns the company and he tells her that Summer needs to go babysit Rhett. Like, watch over him, make sure he doesn't get himself into trouble, make sure he doesn't get into fights or sleep around. He needs to have a squeaky clean image because he's losing sponsors. So she has to stay with him at his family's sort of ranch. And you get a look into his family. They're all so sweet. It's like this found family aspect, and Summer feels like right at home immediately, except with Rhett. She and him sort of have an enemies to lovers situation because he is really annoyed that he has to have someone essentially babysit him while he's a grown-ass man. And she's annoyed that he's annoyed at her. She's just trying to do her job. But slowly they become friends. Over the weekends, they have to take trips and stay in hotels to go to his bull riding competitions. It's just so cute how they talk about each other. It's dual point of view, and just seeing how much they have a crush on each other is just like, oh, it was so fun. I do have to say though that I just don't get bull riding. Like, why do we do this to bulls? I feel so bad. I don't like it, but whatever. It's a book. There was also kind of a big plot twist in here. Maybe not that big, but it was something that I wasn't expecting because I feel like you go into a romance, especially one that's kind of tropey like this. I guess the biggest trope would be like forbidden love because they're not supposed to date each other. They're like in a business sort of setting. But anyway, you're not expecting any sort of plot or any major plot things happening. And then when you get a surprise in a romance, it makes the book that much better. There was a lot of smut in here as well, if that's something you like. And yeah, I'm just so excited to continue the series. I met most of the main characters in the other books, and I can't wait to continue. The last book I read this month was Attached. This is the nonfiction book I talked about in my last book haul. It's all about attachment theory, which is, well, how I learned it in college. My psych class is like how babies and mothers interact, and based on how the caregiver was attentive to their baby, decided which attachment style the baby was going to have on their parent or caregiver or whatever. There's the secure attachment, which means like, lucky you have no issues, congratulations. There's the anxious attachment, there's an avoidant attachment, and then there's like a combination of the two. Guess which one I am? I'm a combo of anxious and avoidant, just in case you were wondering. I thought the concept of this and just reading about psychology and things that happen in your brain, reading about like cavemen and why we have these biological things happening in our brain, and reading about how your relationship with your parents do sort of affect the rest of your relationships. I find it so fucking interesting. This book specifically is talking about adult romantic relationships. I actually didn't realize that when I picked the book up. I thought it was going to be about all sorts of relationships, familial, friendships, workplace relationships, stuff like that. But it's really mostly focused on romantic. If I had actually read the back of the book, I would have known that, but it was still an interesting read. This book does say that romantic attachments, they could be a result of how your parents treated you in early childhood, but it also could be like your first romantic experience. It could be something that happened to you at school, all of these things that sort of make you who you are based on your experiences, but also part of your nature. I don't know, it's all so fascinating to me. And the craziest thing is that I'm reading all of these examples of these people and these couples, and really I'm just getting so much insight to characters, not just the character in ourselves, you know what I mean, but the actual book characters that I'm reading. So I read this over the span of reading a few of these books. Honestly, the entire time I started reading the book, I'm like, okay, they have an avoidant attachment. Okay, this person is a little anxious and it's because their mom did this. And I'm just like psychoanalyzing my characters. And so I think it's actually a really cool thing if you read a lot of fiction to read, because you get so much more insight. It's like, oh, I see and I understand the dynamic here, and it's really fascinating. It's also kind of scary, especially if you did have a kind of a bad relationship in your past, because I'm telling you, there was this particular instance in here. It was like reading my relationship in a textbook. It was the exact same thing that happened, and it's because I was this and he was that, and it was fucking scary is what it was. Yeah, I found this really, really conceptually interesting. However, I did get kind of bored of it. I kind of skimmed the end of it because I don't know, I got a little bored and I wasn't trying to like use this as a workbook, if you know what I mean. There's sort of prompts that you can fill in, things like that, and I skimmed, okay? Okay, on to some of the books I plan on reading in June. Like I said earlier in the video, I am going on vacation and sort of entertaining my in-laws for 2 weeks this month. So I don't know how much I'm going to be reading, which is why I'm not doing a dedicated TBR video. Plus, I didn't read a lot this month, so I have so many books that were on my TBR for May that I'll grab. But let me tell you a couple that I'm thinking of. First of all, I'm already a quarter of the way through Fourth Wing, and I'm not going to give you any insight because I am vlogging it. So be ready for that. If you don't know, this is about a sort of weak girl. She'd probably kick me in the face for saying that. She wants to be a scribe, but her mother is like a general. It's very military sort of book. Her mother forces her to be a writer, a dragon writer. And it's this very deadly sort of boot camp situation. Dragons and the people in this writing community, they hate weak people. They will literally execute you. The dragon will burn you alive just for being weak. So the stakes are very high. I am so excited to finish this. It's giving Divergent energy and it's giving How to Train Your Dragon energy. So yeah. Now for vacation, again, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to read, but I feel like the best books for vacation are either romances or thrillers. So I have a few of each. First of all, I have Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. They're either at a lake or a beach in this photo, in this book. And so I really want the summer vibes with this one. I'm so excited. I don't know much about this. I think this is childhood friendship to lovers, second chance romance. I'm already in the loop of the plot twist in here. I looked it up way back when, but for some reason that's making me want to read it even more. It's pretty messy. Then I have Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This has been in a couple of my TBRs, but I think this is the time to read it. Summer. It's Calling to Me, a thriller. This is all about like a creepy apartment. Our main character is an apartment sitter, but like weird things start happening. That's all I know. That's all it really says. I want to be creeped out. We're going to be staying in an Airbnb and I kind of want to get scared. I also have The Assassin's Blade. I feel like this will be good for the plane because they're, I think, essentially short stories about Selena, the main character from Throne of Glass, and they're all prequels to Throne of Glass. So I could probably like read one, put it down, not feel like I'm losing any speed or momentum in the book. I already feel like I know some of the things that are going to happen because if I'm correct, some of them were sort of half mentioned in Throne of Glass. But if I'm feeling fantasy or a badass sort of energy, this is what I'm going to gravitate toward. In June, I definitely want to pick up Heartless by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in the, what is it called? Like Chestnut Springs? I don't know. It's the second book in the Flawless series. I think this one is about a grumpy older guy. And when I say older, he's probably just like 35 years old. It's not that old. He is a single dad and he's very grumpy, and the love interest is, I think, like the Sunshine, and she's younger. There's an age gap. She's gonna be his nanny, or his kid's nanny, and they're gonna fall in love and probably bang. Most definitely will be banging. And then another one, this is... I started this and I really liked the prologue. It was like this weird, menacing, unknown narrator. And it almost felt like it was not a person narrating. It was almost like death or like a ghost or something sinister like that. And it was very creepy. I really want to read this, but I'm putting it off because I think I'll love it. That doesn't make any sense, but if you know, you know. There are a couple books that I mentioned in my summer new releases that I definitely will be purchasing. All right, this went on way longer than I thought, which is why I'm like rushing, so sorry. But I hope you're excited for June. My birthday is next week. Actually, I'm not that excited, but I am going to dinner, so I will be eating good food. I can count on that. Wish me luck with my in-laws. Hopefully I survive, and hopefully I can get my house clean enough for my mother-in-law. I'm praying, I'm hoping. We'll see. Let me know what you're reading. Let me know if you've read any of these. Tell me your opinions, all of them. Even if they're not book related, I'm gonna be bored the next 2 weeks, okay? Goodbye.